Hello, welcome to this next tutorial. In this part of the series for this dress we're going to have a look at some adjustment morphs and some style morphs. Now there's not an awful lot I could do style on this one, but yeah, we'll see what we can do. Okay, so first of all I want to do a very simple adjustment morph. So with the dress selected, with Genesis selected, I'm going to launch my ZBrush with Go Z. There we go. Now this is ever such a simple one. All we're trying to do is give the customer a morph which will just expand the clothing a teeny tiny bit, which will, may well help for some poke through and such like. Right, so let me just draw this out. There we go. Go to Edit and then Frame. And if I go to the subtools and select the dress, now what I want to do is essentially just inflate this dress, just make it a teeny tiny bit bigger, and we can do that down in the deformation tab, and somewhere down here we have inflate. So if you update this, you'll see that you can inflate and deflate it. I'm going to Control Z that, because what I want to do is just inflate it a tiny bit. So if I click in there, I'll get this little numeric type in, and I'm going to type in 1. So just the tiniest change. And then we'll go back to Go Z, and for this one I'll just go back to basics. I'll just call this, I'm going to call it Expand Stroke Contract. There we go. And then I'll put it in Morphs, and I'll just change this ZBrush to Adjust. And let's check the advanced to make sure it's got all the right things. Reverse deformations, make unique, and accept. Okay, so now if I select the dress, I can go to my parameters and morphs and adjust, and I have the badly spelled expand contract option. And if I put this to 100%, you'll see it expands just a teeny tiny bit, and if I put it to -100, it contracts. So we've got a dual, how can I put it, dual use here. We can either expand it to account for some poke through in some awkward place, or I can contract it and get it closer to the skin. So that's a really handy, really easy one to do. Basically, when you're doing your adjustment morphs, you just want to adjust the awkward places. So that's an overall one. In the next one we'll perhaps look at a particular area. So I'll talk to you then. Okay, so next we'll do a skirt adjustment, and I've just made sure my expand contract is set to 0. I don't want that to be active. And then we'll go Z again, and then accept, and we've got the dress selected. Now I want to mask a whole bunch of this, just so that I'm going to affect only the skirt. So if I press Control, and from off the model, I'm just going to left click and draw down quite a long way to somewhere around there, I think. Now you may think that's a little bit much, but what I'm going to do now is on the masking menu, we're going to blur the mask. So I'm going to continue to blur it until I've got most of the skirt and most of the torso is not selected. And from that we'll then go back to our deformation menu, and we could use inflate. Where's inflate gone? It's here somewhere. I wish it was in alphabetical order, that would be really handy. And what happened there? Let me undo that. I think I clicked something that I didn't mean to, and then I'll just hit one, perhaps another one, perhaps a couple of iterations on that, just to give it a little bit of extra space. Okay, and then it's the same procedure. It's back to Go Z. We'll give it a name, so I'll go back to basic, expand skirt, and onto in morphs and adjust. Again, this is for, you know, those points where perhaps the skirt's poking through in an awkward pose. You can dial up a bit of you know, to the adjust skirt, and that should help. And I'm going to hit accept. Okay, so basically when you're doing your adjustments, it's, you know, mask off, do your change, go back to, you know, add your morph into the dress. So you can do, you know, depending upon the garment, depending upon where it might have some tricky points, you can add those in. You could split it, so you could do left leg, left arm, right arm, neck, you know, anything you like. Okay, so I'm going to do some actual, perhaps add some detail to this with some styling morphs, and we'll go on to that next. Okay, so let's pop some wrinkles in this. So we'll go for our ZBrush bridge. So go Z, and there we go. Okay, so this is fairly straightforward, except to say that you don't want to change the geometry of your dress or garment, whatever you're doing. So the standard brush will not change the geometry, it will simply move it. So what we can do is knock down our Z intensity a bit because it's a little bit too much, and then we can start to draw out some wrinkles. So, whoops, sorry, I'm getting my fingers mixed up. There we go, and zoom in a bit. So what I'm going to do is put some creases along the front of the skirt here, because, you know, I had a look at some references, and that tends to happen even in very tight dresses. So if I just draw across there, so I'm going to draw sort of like from one end to the other to start with, but then I'm going to kind of come in and start to do it a little bit more focused. So one stroke across, and then one perhaps a small part of the way, and then another just for the middle. So all the way across, and then something like that. And if I just have a rotate around here, we'll see that's really subtle. So the joy of subtle things is that it doesn't move things very far, you know, that's all good. But when we go back to DAZ Studio, it's going to be subtle, it's going to be really subtle, and, you know, that may be what you want. But if you apply smoothing, the smoothing modifier in DAZ Studio, it's going to be even more subtle. In fact, you're barely going to see it. So you might want to overdo it a little bit, and we'll perhaps overdo the next one, but for this one I'm just going to leave it like this. So let's hit Go Z, and this time I want wrinkles, skirt. Oops, got caps lock on. I'm always doing that, usually when I get my fingers mixed up. There we go. And this I want to go into morphs and style. There we go. I'm just going to check my options. Reverse deformations is on, and bank unique yes, and click accept. And now you can see that we've got a new category under morphs for style, and I can turn those up and you can see them, and as I said, they're very subtle. So what we'll do in the next is we'll do some more wrinkles, but we'll do them localized, and I'm going to exaggerate them to, you know, to show how that works. So I'll talk to you then. Okay, so let me just turn this off, and then we'll go Z again. And this time we're just going to use one side. That seems to have the wrinkles on. Let me go back to DAZ and see what's going on there. Oh, I put them to -100, silly man. A lot of these, it's good to put limits on, so I'm just going to set the parameters and set this down to 0 so I don't go below. Okay, so let's go Z again and export, and there we go. Now we're there. So for this I want to increase the Z intensity, and what we're going to do is do some wrinkles only on the side or one side of the legs. So if I sort of paint across there, see, we immediately get a much more exaggerated wrinkle, and I'm going to undo that because I'm going to bring it down just a little bit, and then we'll do that again. So I'm going to come diagonally down here to start with, and I'm just going to continue to build that until I'm happy. Yep, somewhere around there I think. And then I'll do the same here, just continue to build it, and then perhaps taper it off at the ends. I'll taper this one off too. There we go. And once again we'll add another one here. You could be more careful, of course. I'm just demonstrating, so I'm not going to spend too much time with it. If you want to kind of smooth the ends off, if you press the Shift key and just click over the ends, you can, you know, smooth them off just a little bit. So there we go. Now we've got like a what's that? There's the left leg wrinkles, and we can go Z. Let's go to basic, and this is wrinkles left leg. And again, I want to pop this in style. There we go, and click accept. Again, I want to put some limits on. And then we can dial that up. And now it's much more pronounced. You can see it, you know, it's not subtle, it's there. So it's really going to depend upon you and, you know, what you want. You know, do you want it to be subtle? Do you want it to be exaggerated? You know, whichever, you know, is your thing really. And this particular morph I would anticipate being there for when I have this leg bent. So if I bend this leg, you know, I would expect there to be some wrinkling, and I could even turn that on and make that a JCM, although it's not a JCM really, it's not a corrective morph, it's a, you know, almost a style morph. Okay, so what will we do next? Well, we're going to do a move morph. We're going to give them some options to shorten or lengthen something. So I will talk to you then. Okay, so a quick shorten morph. If we go Z, export with deformations of course. Now what I want to do is mask a fair bit of this. So with the control key held down off the model, I'll just draw a box down to somewhere around there, and then under masking we'll blur the mask. And now instead of using move, you know, drawing tools and moving tools, we're just going to use like the transpose. So if I go to the move tool here instead of the draw tool, I get this little gizmo. So if I use this, I can turn that gizmo off, and now I can basically draw out my transpose kind of controls. So starting here, here's the midpoint, here's the end point. Now to activate these, if I click in the middle, you'll see, depending upon which one I click in, depends upon where it operates. So this is from the very beginning, this is from the midpoint, and this is from the end point. So I'm just going to undo a couple of those, and since this is a shorten morph, I'm going to start at the midpoint, and I'm just going to ease it up a little bit. I'm going to hold shift down to kind of limit it. I don't want to go too far. Somewhere about there will preserve her modesty, I suspect. And then if we rotate around the back, I just want to check that I haven't poked through down here. I've got a couple of little things I might want to deal with there. So what I'm going to do is clear the mask. So control and then just left click, drag box to draw there. I'm going to, whoops, I don't know what I just clicked. Do not switch. Back to draw, and I'll just make my brush a little bigger and press shift to go into smooth mode. When I do that, the Z intensity will change, so I want to drop that, and I just want to just click very lightly over there to sort those out. So of course now we go Zing, and I'll call this skirt shorten. And it goes in morphs and style, and let's just check our advanced, make unique, and reverse deformations, accept. And now I have the ability to shorten my skirt. Again, I want to put a limit on this, so let's go to parameters and set them in to 0. There we go. Okay, so we have a little bit of option there. You can do it further, of course, but the further you do it, the more likely you are to get poked through around the back. And that's not a problem really. All you need to do is come in here and use your tools to just bring any poke through out. Right, so what will we do? Next I'm going to do a slightly more exaggerated move morph, where I'm going to lift one side of the skirt up. Okay, so I shall talk to you then. Okay, so next we're going to do just a slight rise morph on one of the legs here. So let's go Z and see where we get to. Okay, so let me just oh, I'm terrible at navigating in here. I will get it eventually. I keep forgetting it's the right mouse button for pan and and zoom. Okay, so what I want to do is change my brush now, and again I want one that doesn't change the geometry. And we're going to use, or going to have a look at some of the move brushes. So if I use this move here and adjust my draw size to a more sensible way, I can just simply move the geometry up. There we go. And of course that's poked through in the back. If I, whoops, not the intensity, take the draw size back down again to something that fits around there, I'm just going to bring that back out until I don't have any poke through. Whoops. There we go. Okay, so there are other move brushes and they all sort of perform slightly differently. I just want to draw your attention to them. So we have the standard move, we have move elastic and move topological, and they all perform slightly differently. I'm not an expert, but just to say, you know, the standard move brush, you know, will do what I've just done. The topological move brush will take into account the geometry underneath, and then the elastic has a kind of a nice fall off to it. Anyway, so rather than just do that, I'm going to adjust my size a little bit. I just want to soften that up a little across the transition there. It's not too bad at the back. And then just for fun, I'm going to go back to the standard brush, which is around here somewhere. I'm terrible with big lists. No matter how many times I look at them, I can never find what I want. It's there. There we go. So now I can drop my Z intensity, drop my brush size, and perhaps draw in some little creases. So if I just gently draw over my mesh there, I can add in, you know, some creases to simulate that, you know, the material is bunched up, and depending upon how exaggerated you might want it or how subtle, you know, the choice is yours. There we go. Just going to extend that around a bit, and that one too. Okay, perhaps one more up there somewhere. There we go. Okay, so it's then go Z, and you'll notice that, you know, this is all repeating the same thing over and over again, and is possibly one of the harder things about cloth making. You'll do the same thing over and over and over again, and you'll do it again, and then you'll do it one more time to figure out whether you've, you know, covered all angles. So what's this? Skirt left up, and once again we want that in morph and style. Advanced, yes, and make unique, that's fine, and accept. And then we'll set our parameter settings so that we have a 0 for the min, and there we go. You'll see those little creases, I think, add a little bit to that. It's not just that they're, you know, the whole thing is flat and moving up, that, you know, it's actually creasing as you go. Okay, so, you know, there's all sorts of things you can do. Those are the basic steps. You know, I've done them a few times to kind of reinforce them a little bit, but those are the basic steps of making adjustment and style morphs. So I hope you found that useful, and I'll talk to you again soon.